Honors Algebra, Mr. Lawrence here with your flipped lesson for Monday, March 19th. Today we are going to do two things. We're going to, one, look at the problems from the quiz, and then two, we're going to review how to graph quadratic functions. All right, so in problem number one, now I'm not reading the problem, I'm expecting you to know how to do it because you have a copy. You were supposed to be working on your corrections over the weekend. That was your homework, in addition to the quadratic problems that most of you got done in class. All right, there we go. And they tell you that this is in cubed units. Immediately, you should know that this is a volume. The instructions say to find the length, width, and height of a prism. I find it strange that some of you look at this, you see it's in cubed units, you know how to find the volume of a prism, length times width times height is one formula, and then you don't realize that, oh, I should factor this. Absolutely, you should factor it. And there's four terms, so I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to group these together, being careful to grab that negative, and I'll stick a positive between them. All right, I'm going to pull out my GCF, which looks like it's going to be an x. And I'm going to be left with x squared y squared minus 9z squared. In the second quantity, my GCF looks like it's a 5. Actually, it's a negative 5. And I'm going to be left with an x squared y squared minus 9z squared. All right. So, uh-oh. Okay, I hope there wasn't a huge lull there. If there was, I apologize. Had a computer malfunction. Anyway, let me get back to factoring this problem. Okay, so now I have this quantity and this quantity which match, so I can factor those quantities out. X squared, y squared, minus 9z squared, and x minus 5. Now look, I know that volume of a prism can be found by doing length times width times height. I'm expecting to get three quantities. Right now I only have two. But as I look inside this first quantity, I notice I have a perfect square. I notice I have another perfect square, and there's a negative. This will factor as the difference of perfect squares. I'll get an xy and an xy. I'll get a 3z and a 3z. And one's positive and one's negative. The x minus 5 needs to come down, and there are my three quantities, my length, my width, and my height. And it doesn't matter which one's which, okay? All right, problem 2. We are given this, 4x squared minus 20x plus 25 pi. And it says units squared. That must be an area. Well, it does say in the beginning if a circle has an area. Find the diameter of the circle. Well, I know the area of a circle is found by doing pi r squared. I'm going to factor this to see if I can end up with an r squared. I already have a pi. If I could end up with an r squared, I'm in business. So, lucky for me, this turns out to be a perfect square trinomial. 2x minus 5 times 2x minus 5 times pi. But 2x minus 5 times 2x minus 5 is the same as 2x minus 5 quantity squared. Well, there's my radius. My radius is 2x minus 5. A radius is half a diameter, therefore 4x minus 10 is the diameter. This is a cake quiz, guys. I still can't figure out why you just like panicked and didn't know how to factor. All right, number 3, when the square of the second of 2 consecutive even integers is added to twice the first. Okay, well I need 2 consecutive even integers. I'll say n and then n plus 2. Why is it n plus 2? Because even numbers skip 1. Right? Now 2 is not the first even integer. You understand that, right? They go on forever in both directions. You didn't say find the smallest. You can't find the smallest. All right, it says when the square of the second, well the second one is this. The square of it would be n plus 2 as a quantity squared. Is added to twice the first, you get 76. I'm going to FOIL and get n squared plus 4n plus 4 plus 2n, that'll equal 76. N squared plus 6n plus 4 equals 76. And now it's just a matter of getting it equal to 0 and then solving. There you go. Looks like it's a trinomial. It's going to factor like this. I need 2 factors of 72 to subtract to get positive 6. 12 minus 6 seems like it'll work. So n could equal negative 12, or n could equal positive 6. Now the problem doesn't say whether they're positive or negative, so my choices are negative 12 and negative 10, or 6 and 8. So those are the choices. I could always check them by squaring the second of the 2 and adding it to twice the first. You will get 76 in both cases. All right, problem 4. The measure of the area of a rectangle is 16x squared minus 9 feet squared. Okay, find the perimeter. Well, I know the area of a rectangle is often found by doing base times height, or some might say length times width. I'll bet if I factor that, I might be able to come up with the length and width, or the base and height. I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to factor 16x squared minus 9 into 4x plus 3 and 4x minus 3. I'm going to label 4x plus 3, 4x minus 3, 4x plus 3, and 4x minus 3. The only reason I did all 4 is because that's a perimeter problem. I'm asked to find the perimeter. Now all I do is add up all my x's. Looks like I have 4, 8, 12, 16 x's all together. And then I'm going to add my non-x's. Negative 3, positive 3 cancel, negative 3, positive 3 cancel. And if it gave me units, I will include the proper units, which it did, so this would be feet. And there you go. Piece of cake. All right, hold on 1 second. Let me change direction. Okay, so now we're going to practice graphing quadratics, and I'm going to pull a problem from your homework. All right? I'm going to pull problem number 19. All right. Y equals 3x squared plus 24x plus 80. All right. First thing I'm going to do is use the quadratic formula to try to find my zeros. And I think I might need to make my graph just a little bit bigger. It's easier to see. All right, so I'm going to identify A, B, and C. Okay, use the quadratic formula. X equals negative B, oops, plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC. Whole thing is over 2A. Okay, negative 24 plus or minus Man, I'm slow. I want to say 496, but that's not right. 24 squared by 76. There we go. All right. Minus 12 times 8 is 96, 960. Is that right? Yeah, 12 times 80. All right off the bat, I know I'm going to get no solution here. But that doesn't mean I can't graph it. What that means is the graph will not cross the x-axis. All right, so now that I've found my zeros, or found that there were no zeros, now I'm going to find the axis of symmetry. Okay, going to find the axis of symmetry. So I'm going to do the negative 24 over 6 will equal negative 4. So whatever this thing ends up graphing, it'll be symmetrical about the line x equals 4. Now remember, negative 4, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4. This will not be a part of the graph. Notice I make it a broken line. I do it in a different color entirely. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to find the y-coordinate of the vertex. Well, I'm going to use a t-table. I'm going to plug negative 4 into the original equation. Okay, so I'll do my work down here with 3 times negative 4 squared plus 24 times negative 4 plus 80. All right, so if I get, this is going to be 48, and this is going to be 96 negative and plus 80, right? So 48 minus 96 plus 80 is going to end up being 32. So this thing's going to go way off the graph. So what I'll do is I won't count by ones. It would be silly to count by ones. Maybe I'll count by fours. So I'll mark that this is negative 4. Okay, and this is positive 4. Still counting by ones in the x direction though. Okay, so negative 4, positive 32 is where this is going to graph. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because 8 times 4 is 32. So I'm going to get negative 4, positive 32 is my vertex. Now I haven't talked about this yet, but I know this graph is going to open upward. Most of the ones you're looking at will. Now, I'm going to plug in 0. Why 0? Because 0 is going to make my math super duper easy. If I plug 0 in for x, I'm going to get 80 out. And again, it's not going to fit on the graph, but I'm not going to sweat that. I'm just going to go 0, and I'm going to stick 80 way up high. And I'm going to label it 0, 80. Okay? Then I'm going to be very smart. Because of symmetry, I know that if I go 4 this way, I have to go up to 80, right? Well, because of symmetry, if I go 4 the other way, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll have to go up to 80 as well. Okay, now you know those are not in the graph. They're just a visualization here. All right, so I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4. Get a point right there. On that point will be negative 8, 80. And now my parabola will do this. And there we go. This is a piece of cake. Let's review the steps before we do one more problem. The first step was to find zeros, if any, right? And how do we do that? We use the quadratic formula. Okay, the next step is to find the vertex. If I have 3 points, once I've found the vertex, I can go ahead and graph. Okay, and line of symmetry. Okay. All right. Now, if I only have one point, then I need to find two additional points. If I only have one point. If I have two zeros and the vertex, I can graph. If I don't have two zeros, I've only found the vertex, I need to make sure I have two additional points, 3 points altogether. And then I do that by plugging numbers into the original equation. Okay. All right. So let's look at one more example here. Let's look at one like this. Let's say 23. Actually, no, let's do number 20. Y equals negative 4x squared plus 8x plus 13. All right. I'm going to check for zeros. Going to find my zeros. Pretty sure this is going to have zeros. I'm going to go to my quadratic formula. Okay, I can start simplifying my quadratic formula. Oh, I'm going to have 16 times 13. Which is going to come out to be 208. And that's going to be over negative 8. All right. Plus 64. It's going to give me the square root of 272. Negative 8. And here I'm going to go to my calculator. And one of my zeros is going to occur at 16.49. And you know what? It's not really practical to graph 49, so I'm just going to go ahead and 16.5. I can graph that so much easier. And the other zero is going to occur at, oh, Mr. Lawrence, I made a silly mistake there. Actually, that's not going to be right. So let me go with negative 8 plus the square root of 272. And I'll divide that by negative 8. And so I'm going to get negative 1 point, I'm going to call it 1 because I really can't, it's 1.06, but I can't really graph 0.06 on a graph very well. And then I'm going to do a minus of that, divide by negative 8, and I'm going to get positive 3.1. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a graph. Those are my zeros. Get a graph out here. And I know that my zeros are going to occur at 1, 2, 3.1, just a smidgen over from 3, and at negative 1.1, just a smidgen over there. Okay, so I've got my two zeros, so now I'm going to find my axis of symmetry. Well, I can look at my formula, and it's basically going to end up being x equals negative 8 over negative 8, which is positive 1. So I'll put my line of symmetry in. If you haven't realized this yet, if you average your zeros, you will end up at the line of symmetry. All right, so now that I know that the x-coordinate of the line of symmetry is 1, I can get the y value by plugging 1 into the original equation. So I'm going to go negative 4 times 1 squared plus 8 times 1 plus 13. Okay? All right. So this will be negative 4 plus 8 plus 13. Looks like that's going to be 17, right? Okay. So 17. So it's going to be way up here. That's 10. Maybe I can count by twos. That would be 20, 18, so 17 would end up being right here, right? Yeah. So that's going to be 117 right there. Now I can draw my graph. All right. Okay, I think this video is run long enough. It will serve for 2 days. Make sure you're watching it. We'll get practice in class. Obviously, Tuesday in class, you'll be taking that quiz. All right, Mr. Lawrence signing off. Have a good night, everybody.